Hi, I'm Eddie Walker.
Hi, I'm David Wise.
We're part of Team Machine 2019.
Welcome to the OhioRAAM Show.
Well, thank you, Eddie Walker and David Wise. You're a part of Team Machine from right here in Southwest Ohio, racing in the Race Across America 2019. And we'll be glad to have you on the very next show, March the 7th. I know the last time I announced it for a later time, but sometimes we rearrange things. And I am Lee Kreider, the producer of the OhioRAAM Show, a show about ultracycling. And the show comes to you 3 times a month on the 7th, 17th, and 27th. The OhioRAAM Show is a service of the 3 staffed time stations for the Race Across America here in Ohio. Time stations 41 in Oxford, 42 in Blanchester, 43 in Chillicothe. These time stations are open 24 hours a day as the Race Across America passes by, so they're a great place to come and see the race. And whether you come by here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning, there will be people here to assist you, the racers, to inform you, the fans. Please come out and visit us at one of these time stations. And the dates this year are Oceanside, California. The start of the solo race will be on Tuesday, June 11th, and the teams will start on Saturday, June 15th. And that means the teams will be catching up with the solo riders right here in Ohio. So you get to see a lot of riders in a relative short period of time. And the dates you expect them by here will be from Tuesday, June the 18th through Saturday, the 22nd. And we'll be saying more about how to find your favorite person on the Race Across America at some future show. Be sure to check the show notes. You'll see them right below the video if you're watching the show on OhioRAAMShow.com website. If you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the description box right below the video. And on those show notes, you'll find links to follow the OhioRAAM Show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today's show, we're going out to Salida, Colorado to visit with Janie Hayes. Janie has had an interesting background in ultra sports and now ultracycling. She was in the 12-hour World Time Trial Championships in Borrego Springs last year, and she came in surprisingly second. I should say surprising to herself. So let's head on out to Salida, Colorado, and visit with Janie Hayes. So, Janie, welcome to the OhioRAAM Show. We're glad to see you today. How are you doing out there in Colorado?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
You live in a beautiful part of the world, Janie.
It is absolutely beautiful. I'm looking at 14,000-foot peaks covered in snow right now.
Okay. Well, your name first popped up in my radar at the World Time Trials this year, but you have quite a little background in athletic adventure sports. Tell me a little bit about what you have done before you got into cycling.
Became an endurance athlete actually quite suddenly when I was about 22 years old. I actually didn't have an athletic background. I was spending the summer at my parents' house in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was a little depressed that summer and looking for my purpose in life. And I woke up one morning in my bed and I had a thought, I should run a marathon. I don't know where the thought came from. I didn't have friends who were runners. My family weren't really all that athletic at the time. Okay, well, let's go with this. I went to the store. I bought a book called How to Run a Marathon. It said, go out and see how far you can run and start your long runs at that. So I dragged myself through 8 miles up and down a 2-mile road near my parents' house. And I said, okay, 8 miles, that's where I'm starting. I got into triathlons as well as ultra running, and I was pretty involved with both of those things for about probably 10 years or so. And I moved to Salida, Colorado about 5 years ago, and the year after I moved here, I went to see a movie at our local movie theater, and it was called Inspired to Ride. And it was about this crazy self-supported 4,200 mile bike race across the United States. And I thought, I have to do that. I was there with my husband, and he could see the light in my eyes as we walked out of the movie theater, and he said, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, and you're going to do it with me." We both completed that race in 2016, and then I went on to do it again a second time in 2017. I'm also very interested now in off-road racing, so I do quite a bit of gravel racing and some mountain biking as well.
Well, very good. Like I said, I first saw you at the World Time Trials. Tell me how you did there and what kind of mileage you turned in. It was the 12-hour race you were in, was it not?
It actually wasn't really on my schedule for this year, but in July, I was training for the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, and I had a really serious bike accident, and I fractured my shoulder into about 8 pieces. And I had to have surgery for that at the beginning of August. I couldn't do much riding for about 12 weeks, actually any riding outside for about 10 or 11 weeks in recovery. So I rode my trainer inside, and I really wanted to give myself a goal to reach towards in my shoulder recovery. 10 days before the race, I had my final x-ray and got the okay from my doctor to show up at the start line. Still, I thought it was pretty unlikely that I would actually be able to complete the race. I was willing to give it a go, so my husband and I road tripped out to California. I started, and to my surprise, I was able to finish, push through the whole thing. I ended up with 243 miles. I actually rode 248, but I finished 22 seconds too slow. I was second place. It was actually a great competition with some other very strong women throughout the day, which was exciting.
Well, you've done both supported and unsupported races. As we used to say in English class, or the teacher said, compare and contrast the two.
So many differences and so many similarities. Supported racing is fantastic in that it feels more like a team effort. The communities for both share a lot in common and have a lot to learn from one another. And I've just been felt really lucky to be involved and kind of dabble in both. There's a little bit higher of a risk factor in self-supported racing of getting stuck in the middle of nowhere and really having to figure out your own plan for getting yourself out of trouble. You know, and you have to almost, I think, relish finding yourself in those kind of situations to really, really love self-supported racing. I really just love the feeling, the freedom of being on the open road, just myself. What I find with long distance racing is almost a kind of meditative Zen state. It's strange, you know, that you would kind of find that sleeping on the floors of public restrooms and eating convenience store food like ding dongs and Hostess cupcakes. But for me, that's where I really find that feeling of being completely present that I think we all search for in our lives in some way, shape, or form.
Janie, what are you looking at in the future?
Considering the Tour Divide, which is an off-road cross-country race that goes from Banff, Canada to the Mexican border in New Mexico. It's about 2,500 miles. There's also a couple of interesting new races in the UK and elsewhere in Europe next year that I'm considering. One is called the GB Duro, and it's 4 time stages, self-supported race, half dirt roads and single track and half pavement. The Transcontinental is a race that's always been on my radar. That is a choose your own route with 4 different checkpoints across the continent of Europe.
And the OhioRAAM show has always been interested in charitable works of one kind or another. And you've been very involved with NGOs. You want to say a bit about that and what you do or have done?
Well, I actually have been really fortunate to find myself in a profession where I work with and for NGOs and nonprofit organizations. I started my career in corporate advertising and quickly realized that I wanted to move into the nonprofit sector. I had a chance to live in Malawi, Africa for 2 years and work with community-based organizations there. When I returned to the United States, I continued that work, working in international development. My main focus is primarily with health organizations. So most of these are organizations that are either based in the US or elsewhere and that are working to support communities in low-income countries, largely African countries, but also some in Southeast Asia and South America. So I do a wide variety of communications and advocacy work supporting those organizations. And I feel really lucky that I get to do that from Salida. I really appreciate what you're doing here at the OhioRAAM show, and particularly making an effort to sort of represent the diversity that exists in ultracycling. And I hope that continues to grow, especially I'm really gratified to see how many strong women there are right now involved in the sport. And I hope that continues to grow over time.
Janie, it's so glad to have you on the show. Thank you for taking time for being with us, and we wish you well in not only your work in NGOs, but also in your cycling career.
Thank you so much for having me, Lee. It's been fun talking to you.
Well, thank you, Janie Hayes, for being on the show. We wish you well in your endeavors. We wish to support your efforts. And we want to thank you for viewing this show, and for those of you who support the show on social media. As I announced at the beginning of the show, our next show will be on March 7th with Team Machine right here in Ohio. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. We will all see you again in about 10 days.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.